We continue now at the top of Daf Kufyud Gimel Amud Aleph Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 113a. On the previous summit, the Gemara said that if the worker comes after the deadline that the Balabayas had to pay the worker his wages, and at that point in time the worker is claiming the wages, so then we do not allow the worker to take an oath and collect. As the Gemara here continues, Aval Motas Man Chiyuve, once the time of the Chiyuv has arrived, meaning the obligation, the time of the obligation for the employer to pay has arrived, Rami Anavshe Umidkar, he certainly is going to pay attention, he will remember to pay. In other words, we don't suspect him of transgressing Baal Tolan, and therefore the worker does not have a right to just take an oath and collect. But the Gemara continues, V'chi Sacher over Mishum Baal Tigzol, but the same way that you don't think that the Balabayas is going to transgress Baal Tolan, but the worker also, you think he's going to transgress, that he's not allowed to steal, you think he's lying over here in order to steal, it's the same idea, so we should believe the worker in whatever same capacity that we believe the Balabayas. And the Gemara says, Hasam Trei Chazake, Hacha Chada Chazak. When it comes to the Balabayas, there's two Chazakas that are on his side, but over here by the worker there's only one. And the Gemara explains, Gabe Balabayas, Ika Trei Chazake. By the Balabayas we have two Chazakas. Chada De'in Balabayas over Mishum Baal Tolan. Number one, the Balabayas is not going to transgress Baal Tolan. The time to pay has already passed, and he's not going to want to transgress that. The Chada De'in Sacher Masha Scharo. The other one is that in general a worker does not delay in terms of claiming his wages. V'hacha Chada Chazaka. But here we just have the one Chazaka that the worker is not going to steal, and that's why in this particular situation the Balabayas prevails. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Im yesh edim shatavu hareza nishba v'notel. The Mishnah said that if there are witnesses that the worker did claim the money, is asking for the money, so then he can take the oath to collect. And the Gemara asks, V'katavu l'kamon. The Gemara right now thinks that the witnesses are saying that he's making the claim, but he's making the claim right in front of us. What do we even need these witnesses for? As Rashi explains, V'katavu l'kamon uma edim shatavu oso matzrichin. Why are they necessary that we have witnesses saying that he's claiming? He's making the claim right now in front of us. And the Gemara clarifies what the Mishnah means. Amar Ravasi says, Shatavo Bismana. What's happening over here is that the worker is coming now after the deadline and asking for his wages. Now, in general, if he comes after the deadline, he's not able to take an oath and collect. However, here we have witnesses that say that he did make the claim before the deadline as well. That's Shatavo Bismano. The witnesses testify he did claim it at the proper time, and so now he's able to come after the time and make the claim and take an oath and collect. But the Gemara says, one second, but if he made the claim at the proper time, meaning he said at some point in time there that he wasn't paid, it was before the deadline, but maybe after that he actually was paid. Why does that help us at all? The fact that Adam say that he made such a claim, what difference does that make? Maybe he was already paid. Why should we believe him now after the deadline? Again, the assumption is the Balabayas is going to pay before the deadline. And the Gemara says to that, Amar Abaya says, Shatavu Kolzmanu, that the claim was being made the entire time. As Rashi over here says, meaning maybe the witnesses saw that there was a claim made, then the Adam left from there. Maybe he paid him on that day before the deadline, because again, the Balabayas doesn't want to transgress Baal Tolan, and the Gemara says, Kolzmanu, no, the claim was being made the whole time, Ad Sha'avar Olav, meaning until the deadline passed already, the Adam were there the whole time to see that he wasn't actually paid, and so therefore we know he was not paid before the deadline, therefore he's allowed to claim even after the deadline. But the Gemara continues, Uliolam, but does this go forever now? As Rashi says, Uliolam Bitzmiah, this is a question of Vishvil Shatavu Kol Hayom. So the claim was made the whole day, Velo Nasan, he didn't pay. Yehei Sacher Zen Nemon Liolam Lomar Lo Hiskabalti, now the worker is believed forever to say, I didn't get it. Vim Rotza Balabayas Lishava Lo Naman, let's say the Balabayas wants to take an oath to say he paid, he's not believed. V'chi Kol Kach Hisha Sacher Scharo, he's withholding these wages for such a long time. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chama Bar Ukva, Rav Chama Bar Ukva says, Keneged Osa Hayom Shel Tviyah. It just means another day. He gets one extra day. He doesn't get forever. Rashi says, Amar Rav Chama Bar Ukva, Keneged Kol Hayom Shel Tviyah. Yom Echad La'achar Zmano. He gets one day after the deadline to pay. Nasnu Lo Chachamim Lishava V'yitol. The Chachamim give him the opportunity to take the oath and collect. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hamalve es chaveru, if somebody lends money to his friend, Rashi explains, Hamalve es chaveru v'higi azman, the time comes to pay off the debt, v'lo paralo, and he doesn't pay the debt. So the Mishnah says, Lo yimashchenenu ela bebezin. He can't take collateral except through the court. Rashi says, Lo yimashchenenu afilu b'shuk ela bebezin. He can't do it even in the marketplace. He can only do it through the court. V'lo yikanes lebeso. And also he can't enter into his house. That's why Rashi talked about the marketplace there, because this next line in the Mishnah says he's not allowed to enter his house, litol mashkono, to take the mashkon. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, bachutz tamod, you have to stand on the outside. Rashi says, v'lo yikanes lebeso b'gemara mefarish b'man koy. The Gemara will explain who we're talking about over here when we say that he can't enter into his house to take the mashkon. And the Mishnah continues, hayulo shnei kelim. Let's say he has two vessels. Rashi says, hayulo shnei kelim v'chovo keneget shneim, meaning the debt is equal to the two vessels umashchenu b'shneim. And Rashi understands that he's taking as collateral both of the kelim. Not alechad umayniach echad. So he takes one and he has to leave one. Rashi says, not alechad umachzir echad, meaning b'shashu tzarech lozeh yachzirenu lo. When the person needs this particular item, he returns it to him. Mishum achzara so'avod. That's the idea of returning the collateral. V'ya'akev es hasheni, he holds the second one. Ukashi yitzarech zel hasheni. When the person needs the second one, yitol zeh sarishon, he could take the first one. V'yachzir es hasheni, and return the second. Kidim mefarish v'yazal, as the Mishnah goes on to explain, machzir es hakar b'layla v'yas hamachresha b'yom. He returns to him the pillow at night, and he gives him the plow during the day. As the Mishnah continues, umachzir es hakar b'layla v'yas hamachresha b'yom, and he returns the pillow at night and the plow during the day. And then the Mishnah continues, v'immeis, if the borrower dies, eino machzer liyorshav, he doesn't have to return it to the heirs. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, af liatzmo, even to the lova, even to the borrower, eino machzer elat shloshim yom, he only has to return it within the first 30 days, umishloshim yom ulahalan, but after 30 days, mochron bebezin, he is allowed to sell them in the court. Rashi says, meis halova, once the borrower dies, ein meishav ha'avat liyarshin, he doesn't have to return the collateral to the heirs. She'ein kan mitzvah ha'avat elayim chrenu v'yig bechovo. At that point already, he can sell it to collect his debt. To hashev tashiv lo ksiv v'lo liyarshin. It says you have to return it to him, to the lova, but not to his heirs. And the Gemara says, Amar Shmuel says, shliach bezin, when we're talking about an agent of the court, menatech netuchein, he's allowed to take the item only in the marketplace, aval mashchune lo, but he's not allowed to go into the person's house, into the borrower's house, in order to take the collateral. Rashi says, "V'shliach bez menatech netuche, af hu eino rashoy likonis lebeso lamashkano," meaning even the agent of the court is not allowed to go into the house of the lova to take the collateral. Elo roeu b'shuk u'menatek davar she'ochis biyad mimenu. He has to see him in the marketplace and take something that he's holding in his hand. That restriction applies to the agent of the court. And the Gemara continues, Vatnan, but we learned in the Mishnah, Hamalves chaveru lo yimashchenenu ela bebezin. It says that if a person lends to his friend, he can't take the collateral except through an agent of the court. But mechlal de bebezin mimashkenin, but that does imply that the agent of the court is allowed to take the mashkon by going into the person's house. Rashi says, mimashkenin, mashma betoch habayis. The word mimashkenin sounds like it is saying from the house. And the Gemara continues, Amar lach Shmuel will say to you, how will we understand the Mishnah? What the Mishnah means is, even if you're going to take it from the person in the marketplace, you can't take it. It has to be done by an agent of the court, meaning, again, even the agent of the court can't actually go into the lova's house. And the Gemara says, Hachanam Mistabra, it makes sense to interpret the Mishnah like Shmuel. The Katani Sefer, because it says at the end of the Mishnah, Lo yikonis lebeso litol mashkono, he can't enter his house to take the mashkon. Now who's the Mishnah referring to? Who's not allowed to enter the house? Ileim abal chov, if you're talking about the creditor, Meireisha shmamina, we already know that from the beginning of the Mishnah, because it said the creditor is not allowed to take, he has to use a shliach bezdin. Elalav shliach bezdin, rather it must be that the Mishnah at the end means even the agent of the court can't actually go into the lova's house. But the Gemara says, Imisham halawer, if that's your proof, if you're trying to bring a proof from the end of the Mishnah, that's not really a proof. Because it could be what the Mishnah meant was as follows. Hamalves chaver, if somebody lends money to his friend, lo yimashchenenu ela bebezin, he's not allowed to go into the house except with an agent of the court. Mechlal de bebezin mimashkenin, so on the contrary, that would be implying that the agent of the court could go into the lova's house. Ubal chov, and then when it comes to the creditor himself, afilu netuche namilo, what it means to say is that the Baal Chov, he's not even allowed to do it in the marketplace. Why? Because if we let him do it in the marketplace, we're afraid he's actually going to go into the house. And so if you interpreted it in that fashion, it could be that what the Mishnah actually meant is that the agent of the court is in fact allowed to go into the house of the lova. And the Gemara continues, Meisiv Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks a question from the following brisa. The brisa quotes the pasuk, Lo yachvol rechayim v'rochav. It says that he can't take as collateral the lower and the upper millstone. Hadvarim acherim chavel. It sounds like he could take other items. It also says, Lo sachvol beged al money. You can't take the garment of a widow. Hashal acherim tachvol. It sounds like you could take other items. And the assumption here is that you're taking them from the house. Rashi says, Chavila mitoch habayis mashma. Darechayim v'rechav bego beis hashchichi. These items are found in the house. So it sounds like it's saying you could go into the house. And so the Gemara now says, how do we understand this brisa? Man, who is this brisa referring to? Who's going into the house? Inema Baal Chov, if you're going to say it's the creditor, haksib, but it says, Lo savo el beso lavot avoto. He's not allowed to go into his house in order to take the collateral. Elalav shliach bezin. Rather, isn't the Mishnah, or isn't the brisa rather, talking about the shliach bezin, and it's saying the shliach bezin is allowed to go into the house. That goes against what Shmuel was saying. Shmuel was saying even the shliach bezin has to do it in the marketplace. And the Gemara answers, Tir Gemara Rav Papa, Breider Rav Nachman, Kamid Rav Yosef. Rav Papa, the son of Rav Nachman, answered in front of Rav Yosef. V'amri lo, some have the version Rav Papa, Breider Rav Yosef, Kamid Rav Yosef. It was Rav Papa, the son of Rav Yosef, in front of Rav Yosef. They answered as follows, Liolam bebal chov. Really, these psukim in the brisa is referring to the creditor. Now, the problem is, by the creditor, it already says that he's not allowed to do that. But the answer is, V'lav or ola b'shnei lavin. What it's trying to do is to say that he transgresses two lavin, he transgresses two negative commandments. Rashi says, Liolam bebal chov. Really, the brisa is referring to the creditor. Ka'amar, that's what we're talking about when we say, again, Lo yachavol rechayim v'rochav. V'lo sidok minon. Now, the point of the Gemara's answer is, don't try to draw any inferences. Meaning to say, we tried to make an inference that you're not allowed to go into the home to get rechayim v'rochav. You can't get beged almana, but we can infer that you're allowed to get other items. Hakelim acherim chavel, that by other vessels you are allowed to go into the house, but that's not the case. The v'kelim acherim over mishum lo savo el beso, because you're not allowed to, because there's a pasuk. The pasuk by other vessels says lo savo el beso. He's not allowed to come into his house. Now, if he's not allowed to go into the house, so what does it mean over here? Lo yachavo rechayim v'rochev ulahachi itzrich. The reason why it's necessary is lahosif lav sheni, to add a second lav mishum rechayim v'rochev. There's going to be a second lav if you're dealing with the lower and the upper millstone. V'chad mishum lo savo el beso, besides for the lav of lo savo el beso. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here a proof from the following brisa, mimashma shenemar b'chutz tamod, from the fact that the pasuk says that the lender stands outside. Eini odeya shoish asher atano shebo yotzi. Don't we realize that the person, the lova, the person who owes the money, he's bringing the collateral out of the house? Elamatam v'lomar v'ha'ish. So why does it say v'ha'ish? We already know that that's the case, that the lova is bringing it out of the house if the lender's outside. L'rabo shliach bezin. It comes to include the agent of the court. And the Gemara says, my love, doesn't the brisa mean shliach bezin kalova, that the agent of the court is like the borrower, meaning the shliach bezin actually did go into the house to get the collateral, and he's bringing it out just like the borrower. And Rashi explains, mimashma shenemar b'chutz tamod v'yotzi elecho eso avot. It says that the malva stands outside and the lova brings the collateral from the house. Obviously, he's bringing it out of the house. Elami yotzienu im lo balabais. Who's going to bring it out of the house if not the balabais, not the lova? My love, l'rabo shliach bezin, doesn't it mean the shliach bezin sheikonis l'socha bayis, that the shliach bezin enters the house? V'hochi kamer means like this: v'oishtu hu shliach bezin v'asher atano shabo yotzei elecha, the agent of the court and the lova, they're going to bring it out, and you see the shliach bezin can go into the house. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis.